Prateek, I think we can get started. We are already 5 minutes past three.
Sure.
Others will join later.
Sayed, I'll pass it on to you.
Sure. Hey, good afternoon, all. Thank you for joining today for this webinar, The Future of Work with AI and Gen AI. My name is Syed and I am the StackRoute Service Delivery Manager at StackRoute. And it's my pleasure to welcome you all. It's my honor to introduce Prateek Bansal, co-founder and co-CEO of Great Shine AI. Prateek has over 16 years of industry experience and is a leading expert in generative AI. He has worked with top companies like BCG, KPMG, and TCS, and has trained over 800 professionals in AI development. So we also have Gaurav Vaidyasen on the call today. He's our solution architect from the data science perspective. We also have Sachin Grover, who is our solution architect and also the head for service delivery and operations at StackRoute. So without further ado, let's welcome Prateek Bansal to share his insights on the future of work and the evolving collaboration between AI and humans. Prateek, over to you, please.
Thanks, Sayed. Thanks for the great introduction. First of all, thanks to NIIT for the opportunity to talk to this great audience. And I appreciate you all taking out time in the afternoon, between your workday to come to this webinar. The whole goal for today's session is to help you sort of get onboarded to generative AI, but also understand how you can really adopt Gen AI in your organizations. And we'll keep the session as practical, as use case driven as possible so that you can really see some live examples. You can, really progress from that perspective. Primarily, I'm going to start covering how AI has evolved over the last few years, so that you can really see what technologies you are dealing with and where you're going to be heading. We're going to talk about the role of automation, and again give you a lot of examples around automation. How leaders or business leaders, organizations, business functions are using AI for enhanced decision making. I'll be happy to share examples of how BCG has done that in the past and how we have done similar work there. Especially in areas of recruitment and HR, and those use cases where we are seeing a lot of traction because business functions are the first target of productivity enhancement. And how you guys can focus on upskilling for the AI-driven future while keeping ethical considerations in mind. We'll keep this a slightly interactive session, which means that you can go ahead and post your questions in the chat. Probably what we'll do is we'll take narrow questions during the session, and towards the end of the session, we will have 15-20 minutes to give you answers. And obviously, after the session, we can definitely connect, for any queries that we have. And the folks from NIIT is going to help me manage the chat section. All right. So I think let's start with where the journey started, which all of you might know. ChatGPT was a buzz and is still a buzz for the last 2.5 years. But back in October, 2021, 2022, ChatGPT became a sudden buzz. And in terms of the technology, it was astounding to see the amount of users or amount of pickup that this technology has. To give you a comparison, Instagram took 75 days to reach 1 million users, while ChatGPT just took 5 days. This tells us that the adoption of something like ChatGPT or something which is very easy to adopt in terms of AI-driven technology is really possible. Another good example is ChatGPT, just not the first 5 days. In just 2 months, it's reached 100 million users. So in terms of user adoption, we saw a great trend when it launched, and now we are also seeing how organizations and enterprises are adopting it. When I talk about how this has evolved over the last 2 years, what we are seeing is from just basic prompting, from just asking ChatGPT a basic question, now the world has evolved into AI agents, and I'll take you through the journey step by step, from AI, from prompting to RAG to other solutions of how the organizations are progressing. This is where we have seen a lot of questions coming in, so feel free to ask that in chat, and I'll see if I can incorporate that when I walk you through this. So let's start with the basics, right? You guys have seen ChatGPT. Behind ChatGPT, there is a model called GPT, which is also known as a large language model. Fundamentally, it's a model which has been trained on trillions of lines of data or that's available on the internet, they typically use a very simple technique called unsupervised learning, where all the data is just dumped into a model to learn itself, and then humans give it feedback through a technique called reinforcement learning. This is what allowed a ChatGPT like model to be able to come up with great answers. So in the very beginning, as I said, typically when you go to a ChatGPT, the model is answering from its own knowledge. So prompting is fundamentally just allowing you to go to an LLM and get you an answer. A very simple example of this is you ask a model to write a paragraph about US independence, and it's going to start writing a paragraph for you. Pretty standard way of how it deals with it. Now, from simple prompting, what we saw was that enterprises wanted to adopt ChatGPT, right? Enterprises wanted to adopt LLMs. Now, these LLMs, while in the very beginning were just available via the ChatGPT interface or via the Google Gemini interface or other interfaces, these also became available as an API to enterprises. For example, as of today, you can go to OpenAI's website and subscribe for an API and get an API key for your company. You can also go to Azure and ask for another OpenAI key, and Azure can provide you via the Microsoft route. Right. Another example is you can go to AWS and you can really acquire APIs from AWS for another model called Claude. So there are many such models. Google is offering Gemini. So fundamentally, AI has become very plug and play. Earlier, we used to go and study, build models, hire data scientists, train models, look into your own data set, do data cleaning. Now all of that has got eliminated, and fundamentally now you have an LLM API which you can just consume. So the first thing that we saw came up in the industry about a year and a half, 2 years ago, was something called as retrieval augmented generation. In very simple, plain terms, a retrieval augmented generation system just allows you to connect a knowledge base to your LLM so that you can get an answer which is grounded in your knowledge. And this knowledge can be anything. It can be your PDF documents, Word documents, but this RAG has become a key technique for you to be able to connect your enterprise information and get answers or build process flows which can really generate actions for you, right? Now, what I'll do is I'll give you an example of or a live example of how RAG is working. But a very simple example here is what is, if you have a lot of your HR policies somewhere in a SharePoint folder or in some other folder, you can use this technology to ask the question, what is my company's paternity leave policy? And it's going to give you exactly that crafted answer instead of somebody going to find that policy and get into that solution, specifically look for that document. A good example of this is I wanted to show you a quick platform. This is a RAG platform. Fundamentally, this is something my company does, but this is a very generic platform that many organizations might have seen. Fundamentally, what happens is imagine that these are all your content sources that are available here. Here I have uploaded all HR policies related to the company. Also, there is some sales material and multiple other materials. Now, using this, what you can do is you can start asking questions to the system across your document set. And RAG is such a technology that can allow you to ask questions across thousands and thousands of document sets, right? So you need not be restricted to only like 10 documents or 20 documents. And hence, it can really support functions like HR, finance, etc., etc. So you can really organize your current content management systems to be connected to RAG systems. Okay, so I'll give you a very quick example. For example, I want to ask, how many sick leaves do we get in a year? How many sick leaves do you get in a year? Now, in this example, we have also integrated something called as speech to text. So this has now translated live, what I've spoken. It really does a great job with Hindi as well, and Arabic and 22 to 25 other languages. But all this is feasible using these OpenAI models that are out there. I apologize for the speed, but I'll quickly show you another example here. I'll show you an example I had run beforehand. So when I say how many leaves can I take in a year, in this case, this has actually pulled up exactly that sentence instead of finding that. And when I ask another follow-up question, how many sick leaves? So you can see the AI has actually taken in context of the previous question and added that. So what is the total number of sick leaves I can take in a year, which was my original question. And once it gives me the final answer, it does not only give me the final answer. A RAG technique can also allow you to see the reference of that answer. In case you are asking a very complex question, it can go across references across multiple pages. But in this case, this has actually pulled up that exact clause and things like those. So you can imagine the use cases you can have for your organization, for your business functions, for something like this, where you can retrieve directly very specific information from specific pages inside your organization. Right. So the original question I had asked, again, you can see it's given me 6 days of sick leave, and again, the same sick leave policy as a reference. Now, coming back to RAG, and again, happy to take questions if you have. Um, this is just a basic. Now, even though a lot of organizations haven't adopted RAG yet, but it's still now considered a very basic technique in terms of how you people are retrieving stuff. And RAG initially was built around unstructured content, which means your PDFs, videos, text, files, PowerPoints. Those are the kind of things that we saw in early days of RAG. The next evolution of RAG moved on to from there is agentic RAG. Now, in a typical organization, your data is typically not just stored in one source. It may not be only just in a SharePoint folder. It might be in multiple places. It might be HR records in your HR database or a survey that you might have run. You might have a Workday-like application where you have this data. If thinking about a financial function, you can think about your financial payroll information, your financial profit and loss statements, things like those. All of that information is available now using a technique called agentic RAG, where fundamentally when you ask a question, the LLM decides where to go, right? If your question is more related to policies, it will choose to go to a knowledge base. If your question is more related to data, it will choose to go to a database. And if you have a question related to an application, it can actually go to an application API. Now, these are some of the feasibilities that are allowing these LLMs to become very powerful and these solutions for enterprises to become very powerful. So the agentic RAG is, again, you're sending an agent, a small agent, to go and decide where to pick information from, bring it together, and give you an answer. Now, a very good example of this is, imagine you have connected your leave policies, HR policies, and you have your employee record data, employee leave record system. And I go ahead and ask what percentage of people have taken more than leaves that are as per the company policy. In that case, you can't just go to the policy folder, and you also need database access, right? So in both these cases, what it does is it first checks on how many leaves are there in a policy, which is typically 18 days. And it then calculated and found out that 3% of the 20,000 employees are able to have actually taken more leaves than the company policy, right? So instead of somebody building out a very complex report or a Tableau dashboard to see all of this stuff, or asking an SQL developer to do this for you, now you can really use the power of these LLMs to be able to build an application to get all of these answers. So now instead of just looking into your unstructured information, which is already a challenge, it also now looks into your applications and databases. This is what typically agentic RAG is. And you can not just use it in one scenario, you can use it in hundreds of scenarios. A good example that I wanted to show you today was something that we recently built for Accenture. This is known as a proposal builder. Now, this system uses multiple agentic RAG techniques and RAG techniques to achieve the outcomes. For example, if you have an RFP, say you have in this case, there is a 360-page RFP here. Now, this RFP, it's very difficult to read such an RFP. So the first thing that you want an AI to do is, based on the parameters that you want to see in the RFP, it goes and automatically summarizes those key data points so that you don't have to read the 400 pager and look into a quick qualification of the criteria. So that's the first step you can get an AI to do. The next step that you can get an AI to do is start using the agentic RAG to start filling the RFP for you, or filling the responses for the RFP for you. This is a document that an organization builds to submit for taking approvals on working on the RFP. Now, in this case, this agentic RAG system is A, reading the RFP, B, looking into the previous history of this company or the RFP company from the old records of the organization, and C, it's going all over the internet and finding relevant information related to the company. For example, in this case, it says NBPDCL proudly serves 1 crore customers across 9 supply circles. This information got fetched from the internet, right? But other information might be available inside the RFP or other places. So it starts building this document for you. Now, the good part about these systems is you can start connecting these sources and other systems to producing outputs in the way you want. In this case, this export will actually export everything in the company-friendly format so that the person who was supposed to earlier build it does not have to build it themselves. I had pre-exported this document for you before the call, so I'll just quickly show you that. Give me a second. Yep. So you can see this is basically the company standard format. And now it has populated that format, not from the UI, fundamentally from directly from the model, and prepared this document. Instead of somebody spending 7-10 days of an analyst time, this has instantly filled the document and built it for you. This literally takes about 30 to 40 seconds to build the whole document. Now typically when people think about generative AI, they think, okay, I have to, it's a chat system. I'll do a chat system. This is a very good example of where it's not only about chat, it's also about doing your research. It's also about getting your content. It's also about building an automated flow. So you can imagine you can start doing automations across your organization using such a system. This is one example of a Word document, but there are multiple such examples of things you can get an agentic RAG system to do. Here, it's actually building slides of a PowerPoint and exports it in an organization-friendly format. Another example is finance, where it actually extracts all the finance clauses and the documents or the specific hidden contracts or signed documents available in that 400 pager and extracts all of that for you. Imagine you asking somebody to just do the extraction work. I think we have a quick question. I'll be happy to address a question. It'll be great if you can ask it in the chat, and I'll probably pick it up from the chat. Or if you want to unmute yourself or quickly ask, I think I can quickly address.
Sure. I'll probably put the question in the chat, sir.
Sounds good. I'll pick it up from there. Okay. So I think so far what I've been able to explain to you is how from just prompting to RAG to agentic RAG, the world has evolved. And just for everyone's benefit, I can tell you a few technologies that you guys might want to go back and study. There is a technology called LangChain or a framework called LangChain. It's an open source framework which you can use to build an agentic RAG system. Another very popular framework is Llama Index, which is also something that you can connect with OpenAI and other models to be able to ask questions to your systems. The systems that I was showing you is a combination of some custom work, addition of some LangChain work, some Llama Index work, because one of the important aspects of all of these systems is making your data ready for AI, right? So if you as an organization want to become an AI first organization, you have to think about how you can be a data first organization, right? Because your data should be ready to be consumed by AI. You have to think about data sensitivity, data privacy. You have to think about no non-duplicacy of data, because at the end of the day, this is like a human. An AI model is like a human brain. It's garbage in, garbage out. So if you put in good data, it's going to get you good results. And that's where you're trying to use the power of an LLM in an enterprise when you're able to connect it to your systems and your data points, right? So that's very important from that business perspective. From the world of agentic RAG, the next evolution, which has become very popular in the last 3 to 6 months, is AI agents. Now, on the very top, what you can see is these are the same tools, or these were the same, three knowledge bases, databases, and applications. I've just summarized them on the top. In the new world of agentic RAG, in the new world of agents, we have started to call them as tools because you are now connecting various tools and using an LLM on the fly, you are deciding which tool to call, right? But while you are interacting with so many tools or so many systems, because in an organization, you might end up talking to 10 APIs, 10 applications, 3, 4 data sources, right? You would want, while it's doing those interactions across systems, you would want it to have memory. You would want it to pass context from one system to the other so that it can pass in reference data points, right? And you also want the agent to think like a human being, right? To evaluate the data. Example, I've read the HR policies. Now I'm reading all the data from the data source, right? I am going to another place and in collecting that, but I need to ensure that the context from one conversation to the other is passed on. So memory has become a very important concept there. And lastly, using these LLMs, you want it to be recursive. You want it to go back, check the results against the original query, check the results against the data points, and come up with that. Right. I have a question from Rishabh. It's a very relevant question. I'll quickly ask them that. So first thing is Rishabh is saying, what are the steps to reduce hallucinations while trying to use models from GenAI API? There are many such steps that you can take. there are techniques that using which you can start building and thinking about a concept called guardrails or constitution AI, where anything that goes inside the model or comes inside the model first goes through a grounding principle, right? To quote an example, this platform I was showing you, when I asked a question here, it actually grounded my query. It did not just directly send it to the AI model. It actually changed my query, and it ran it through a certain number of rules and prompts before it sent it to the model, right? So these are very important conditions which you will build while building these technologies, that your messages, A, first going into the system should be grounded, and when it coming back should also be grounded. You can take control of your platforms accordingly. That's the first step of reducing hallucinations. The second step is asking the system to stick to your data, right? Asking the system to not give answers when it's not feeling confident. One of the good things about AI or Python or deterministic solution building is that you get scores. You get scores of data relevance. So when I am retrieving this policy or this page specifically to give you an answer, I will have a relevance score to it, right? So beyond a certain threshold, we tell the AI model, don't answer, right? Don't go ahead and tell the user, I am not confident enough to give an answer. So the system that I am showing you has a lot of such guardrails built in. This also has guardrails built in around not giving PII to the end user, right? So it actually, when I ask a specific question about somebody, it actually says, I can tell you the name, but I can give you the rest of the data points, right? So all of these conditions you will have to build into your platform. And the frameworks that I'm telling you, like LangChain, like Llama Index, actually give you an opportunity to do system prompts or system conditions where you can really build a section for this. And it all depends on how your organization is structured, what are your data policies, that how do you want to give it. But the good part is it's now all English driven. So you can really write your rules and algorithms just like you write in English. So remember the days of Robocop? Robocop had 3 laws. Similarly, you can think about giving a few laws to your AI. The second question is how can we implement agentic RAG using Python? As I said, you pick up these open source frameworks like LangChain and Llama Index. They have readily available Python libraries. There are readily available YouTube videos. Probably in a 30-minute video, you should be able to build your own agentic RAG system locally on a laptop. One thing that I can tell all of you guys to start experiment with, there is a platform called Anything LLM. If you download Anything LLM, you can actually run a large language model locally on your laptop and run everything there, connect your own documents, and see how a RAG works locally on your laptop. I'll be happy to punch in these details towards the end of the session in the chat. I hope that answers that question. Probably if not, I'll be happy to take in more later. But one of the things, as I said in the agent structure, is being able to get the AI to go through your data, go through your applications, and even integrate with your applications to hit an API and take action. So the system can actually take an action and finally tell you what it has done. Has it retrieved something? Something that we recently did for airlines client was to be build a travel agent for them, where it was actually retrieving the weather of the location you wanted to visit from a weather API. It was finding out the flights and the hotels and some example itineraries that were available in PDF documents, and build a whole plan with flight recommendations and hotel recommendations to the user and recommended date changes because of the weather API. So those are some examples. A very big example is for a very complex agent is an HR competency framework. So imagine you have industry reports, industry documents, things like those, and your internal data, cohort information inside your organization. You can really send out an agent to spend some time, go through things, and come up with great answers, and even build out a report for you. But it's a combination of tools that you will give to the AI agent to perform those tasks for you. The good part is AI can decide which tool to go to and how to action that tool. A good technologies that I can quickly recommend to all of you guys on agents are one is from the same company that LangChain comes from, or that is called LangGraph. LangGraph allows you to give very deterministic flows to your agents to decide, okay, go to database first, go to the second database second. You can really decide your flow. Very powerful in a customer service scenario where you have to really build a whole dialogue process, using generative AI. Crew AI is another agentic flow process which can actually go a lot of research work for you. Crew AI allows you to not just have one agent, but have a multi-agent architecture to go and do your jobs all across the world and come back with results. Magentic One is a Microsoft framework launched just a week ago. Very powerful framework where it actually has even given you an agent to browse the internet. So you can when you ask it a question, you can live see it's going to Bing search. It searches the pages, clicks the buttons, opens up something, comes back. And Swarm, which is an OpenAI framework, SWARM. Swarm is another very experimental framework. In terms of stable frameworks, LangGraph combined with LangChain, Crew AI are very stable frameworks that you guys can explore for agents. I'll give you a quick example of agents. This is the platform called agent.ai. I would really suggest all of you guys to go there today. This is the platform by the CTO and the co-founder of HubSpot. Agents.ai is a combination of 97 agents. They add agents every day. Tomorrow it was 87. Yesterday it was 87 agents. You can see they have built individual agents to do jobs. For example, there is a company research agent here. I can actually enter a domain of a company here and it'll do a research for me on, it'll go do internet research, look into industry reports and do that. You have, SEO optimizers, you have combinations of idea generators, legal tech agents. There are many free agents available here. They give you some free credits so you can play around and do this stuff. He had started this as a hobby, but this is becoming a very powerful platform. And the other good thing is when I told you multi-agent architecture, the same platform actually allows you to give you an agent builder. So I can go ahead and combine multiple agents together to build my own agent. You combining all of those four multiple pieces that you're seeing there. Same architecture you guys can replicate in your organization using the technologies I've mentioned. There are many resources available all over the internet, YouTube. But as I said, search for the right things. Building AI agents using LangGraph, QAI is something that you guys can explore. But start with the journey, and that is what I wanted to do. I wanted to ensure that you guys think about it as a journey and not directly jump to agents. Think about building a simple RAG. Think about making it agentic, and then eventually making it an AI agent. All right. This is a very, very big example of a large agent where, when you ask a user query, there is an agent sitting which is deciding where I need to send that query. There is a RAG system which is retrieving information. There is a text to SQL which is writing SQL on the fly on databases. There is an API agent which is writing APIs and pulling information from APIs. There is a dog gen and there is an internet search agent. And eventually you are able to either get a response or an action in an application. But yes, agents are something that's very powerful that will allow you to really build very large scale automation systems while thinking about keeping humans in the loop. And I'll talk about that next. Before I move forward, I wanted to give a shout out to an NIIT framework. This is the 4A framework. This is something that I would suggest for you guys to think about when you're getting onto your GenAI journey. Typically, we are seeing in organizations, it starts from building awareness. And I think this is where I'm glad to see so many people on the call because awareness is where you start. So think about using these technologies, think about understanding how they work, how you can deploy them. Start with basic applications because if today you are building something in your organization, you might have access to GitHub, you might have access to Azure or other platforms. So you should be able to play around with such systems already so that you can get your hands on with something like a Copilot. If not, Copilot is generally available to just go and explore from an industry standpoint. The third step from there is augmentation, where you start giving your workforce at a large scale in terms of building these systems or in terms of starting to use these systems, right? I can give you an example of Boston Consulting Group. When I was there, they have done a major implementation of ChatGPT Enterprise, and in the last 1 year, I remember they have now around 600 custom GPTs there, which means that people picked up ChatGPT and built their own custom GPTs for various jobs they do on a day-to-day basis. So that was a great example of augmentation. And the final scope is where people reach the adaptation phase, where they actually go to cloud. They implement the cloud AI infrastructure. They become a data first organization. They think about how do I implement generative AI. Think about training your own models. But I've given you an example of a few platforms like Azure OpenAI. A lot of organizations, and probably yours as well, might be scared to just use an AI on day one. That, okay, I don't want to send my data to OpenAI. The good part is majority of the organizations work with Microsoft. So what Microsoft has done is that you can reach out to them to take OpenAI from the Azure instance perspective. And along with their service agreement, they give you a very clear policy that whatever we keep in cache, we will purge it in 30 days, and we'll not use any of your data for training purposes, and there'll be a dedicated instance for you. Now, this gives organizations, your CISOs, your CTOs and CIOs a lot of confidence when adopting these technologies. I work with a lot of banks. Azure OpenAI has become the de facto standard of using the technology, and to a great extent, a lot of organizations also use Google Vertex. Um, IBM Watson is picking up, but still, is a laggard in terms of as compared to Azure and Google. Um, Now, I wanted to talk about a few metrics, what I've seen in the industry. Um, 80% of the Fortune 100 companies are already integrating generative AI. If they are not yet in production stage, they're at least in POC to pilot phases. And we are already seeing a great benefit to developers, to marketing teams, to HR teams and legal teams. I'm only talking about business functions because that is the most easiest way to experiment with AI, right? What a lot of organizations, worry about is that, oh, I might, I can't just use it in customer service, and what happens is AI messes up with my end customer or consumer. So that is where our recommendation or my recommendation typically is start with your business functions because they are low risk. They are your cost centers. So you can probably do a small pilot or a POC with your marketing team to augment them. To your HR team again with the simple RAG system. To your legal team to look into finding old contracts, using RAG and things like those. Um, so when talking about development, and probably you guys are thinking that how we can think about development, I just wanted to quickly cover a few platforms that I am seeing in the market and we have used as well. There are these AI pair programmers. Again, this is primarily for development teams, assuming some folks here are technical folks, so I wanted to quickly cover this. um, uh, there are platforms out there which can actually do coding on your behalf. Very famous open source ones are Ada and Klein. What you do is you take those LLM APIs, connect with Ada and Klein, and you now have a working model where you can talk to. Um, Other than that, there are these closed source models or solutions called Cursor, Bolt, GitHub Copilot, V0, which can also be used. Um, I'll give you a quick example of Bolt here from my perspective. This is a example I ran for all of you guys. So imagine that you are not a technical person or you're not a developer, but you want to start using AI to build your own websites or solutions. Here, I just said a single line. I just said build a real estate website similar to Zillow. Zillow is a very famous real estate platform in the US. And this AI went in and created so many coding files available in the platform. So here it has actually created, you can see all the TypeScript files in the coding platform. And you can see I already have a full UI for this platform. This I didn't do anything apart from just writing a single line to this bold.new. You guys can do this today. Just go to bold.new, and you will be able to sign up and immediately get this to working for your purpose. Um, if not being able to do the full job for you, the system is actually at least able to get you started. And that's a great journey. And in a few years, I'm pretty sure this will be able to build a full end-to-end system for your organization. Um, but yes, these are what we called as human in the loop systems. I'll give you two examples of human in the loop systems of how we have worked with organizations. One, and we always recommend this, and we are saying this out loud that if you are building a Gen AI system as of today, if it's in application mode and not just augmentation, you really need to think about how do you build human in the loop, right? This is an example of a large medical provider in the US where a post-operative care solution was built where a patient, when it comes to the via chat or via email, the LLM using the response generation agent understands the user's query, gets into the database, pulls up the patient's record that what was the operation that the patient had done some time back, look into the policies or the SOPs of the hospital that the nurses might want to refer to, pull that information, do a sense check, do an evaluation check of that in terms of medical quality parameters. Is the answer right or not? Reconfigure the answers and give it to the nurse. Now the system will first give it to the nurse, and the nurse will press enter to send it to the patient. It can't go directly to the patient. Now, instead of having 20 nurses typing this day in and day out, now you have pre-built responses. That itself is a huge productivity boost for the nurses in the hospital, right? In this case, there were about 60 nurses doing this job, and eventually they were able to ensure that the nurses were actually doing patient care, and only 5 nurses were required to act as the human in the loop validation process because the AI was able to, give an answer. Um, Rishabh, you had asked a question. I have, posted that. Okay. Yeah. So, but one of the great things about human in the loop is you can really tell your AI some feedback. Now, please remember these technologies are pre-trained technologies. You are not training a model again by giving feedback. Good thing about GPT, the P in the middle is pre-trained. So these are not live training, but you can actually give an agent some feedback so that it can actually reconfigure an answer. For example, if the agent came back with a bad answer about heart transplant, the nurse can actually tell it, no, this is what you should have thought about, and actually goes back and crafts a new answer and give it back. So that way, the human in the loop validation becomes more stronger. And also you are able to see, or your data scientists can see in the future that, okay, these are the answers which require reconfiguration. So we should go back and change our prompts or, give more feedback to the model. So I would really recommend you guys to think about how when you want to build your AI automation systems, how you can think about human in the loop in the process. At a leadership level, what we are seeing is that AI is really helping business leaders. I've talked to a lot of CTOs, CIOs, CXOs. I've done a lot of leadership programs. They are very interested in not just thinking about productivity for their teams, but how it can really help them do better decision making. And one of the things we've noticed with AI, or especially with humans, is that imagine you have an analyst and you send the analyst to do some analysis on past, look into all the past sales pitches that we have made, which got converted, what are the reasons of getting conversion, things like those. Now that human can also be biased. Human might not, that human might read 100 documents, but think about or picking up only relevant stuff which he or she thinks is relevant for the analysis. The good part about AI is highly unbiased, right? Not in terms of what it's trained on, but in terms of how it acts, right? So in this case, it can actually look into the blind spots which your analysts or you yourself might miss. And this is where, we have seen, oh, I didn't think about that scenario that was available there, which is where, we are seeing a big, powerful AI agent to be able to do that. Studying unstructured data was another big problem. It's easy to build a Power BI report or a Tableau dashboard on your database, right, or on your tables or Excel files. But it's very difficult to extract relevant information from thousands of PowerPoints or documents and be able to see that. This is where generative AI has really changed the game in understanding unstructured data. And lastly, the AI agents can really act as your analysts. You can really send those AI agents across multiple sources, as I explained before. Reason with it, check, analyze, come back with answers, give it to another agent, do something different on top of it, convert it into a document, send it across to 100 people, get feedback, evaluate. There are many such things you can do using these systems. So I'll just take a quick pause to have a quick drink of water. Happy to take any questions in the process if you have.
Patrick, this is not similar.
Yep.
Patrick, I have small question from my side. From my understanding, a RAG is a place where we'll be keep all the documents related to the and there is a AI agent, and it will be pick the data from the RAG and it will give the information like that, right? From my understanding is correct or?
Your understanding is correct. The process of retrieving is called RAG.
Okay.
Right. So you're basically telling that you are retrieving, you're augmenting the LLM with a original context and then giving an answer, generating an answer. So that's what RAG means. But your understanding is correct. Fundamentally, if you have those sources, you can really build a RAG system to get answers from it.
Okay, the rack system means the entire the data will be placed in the rack system, right?
Correct. Correct.
Okay, and
So
we use as agent as any agent of AI agent to pick the data and give the prompt to ask. That is correct, right?
correct. So an AI agent actually does a job. Think about AI agent as a associate in your company, or as a person in your
Uh-huh.
company who can actually, like, let's take a very simple example. I have an executive assistant. I can tell my
Uh-huh.
executive assistant to go to that file folder on the side of the room, pull up those
Uh-huh.
3 last contracts, talk to the
Okay.
HR department or the legal department, get it reviewed, right?
Uh-huh.
And do this. So AI agents can really do that for you. It can go to one system, go to the other
Okay.
system, go to the third system, have that information stored in the memory, combine all of it together, and then give you the final result.
Okay, okay,
That's
got
what
it, got it. Yeah, the
that's what an
system
agent.
will be interlinked, right? All the system will be in the center location, and it will be give the
Absolutely.
information.
You'll
Yeah,
have to build your
thank you.
you'll have to build your system in one place and connect to multiple sources.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
All right. I'll move on in the interest of time. I know, Rishabh, you had another question, but probably I'll take it towards the end. All right. Here are a few examples of what we have seen in internal business functions. These are the easy targets. This is where what I've seen is people are able to prove value and then ask for funding in their organizations, right? A very simple is that, if you have a large HR team which is doing screening of review of resumes, and then going and emailing candidates or calling candidates to schedule interviews, you can really put an AI agent to do all of those jobs for you. The first part of the agent looks into all the resumes, looks into the job description, finalizes resumes, sends it to probably a human being to validate, okay, these are the people I have finalized. Once the human confirms, it can actually send to a scheduling agent, which starts sending emails on your behalf and collects the responses and books your calendars. Right. So this is one great example of a screening and a scheduling agent. We have also seen company representative agents. A lot of new joiners or people who have actually just getting interviewed want to know something about your company. They might call up the HR and send a lot of emails. Now imagine you have a bot which is connected via RAG to your company onboarding documents or some company information documents, or your website even. It can actually give all the answers related to the company and the company culture and other pieces, right? Internal organizations, HR policy chatbots, which I was showing you earlier, understanding HR analytics data, that's a very powerful agent's use case. People are struggle with writing their annual performance summaries, so those are very simple plug and play solutions on top of something like Workday or other solutions. You can really see how the employee has performed over the years, get AI to summarize all of that for you, and bring up a performance report card, including how their leaves have been, how their performance have been, things like those. In L&D teams, we are seeing a lot of personalization being done using generative AI. Like, for example, you had built a training which had content related to data protection. Now, if you use AI, it can actually on the fly design some examples related to that particular team member or the business team that person is working with, instead of just doing data protection generically, right? So the personalized agents, we are also seeing L&D teams using course building agents, where I have built a course today about, say, prevention of sexual harassment. I have built a whole program around it. Tomorrow the law changes, Indian government changes the law. You can really send a course agent to study that new law, make recommendations by looking at the existing course, and come up with results. So this is just touching the surface of what these technologies can do. You can imagine these in your coding practices, imagine these in your end user use cases, like in a banking scenario where I can build a banking bot. I can build a KYC automation, right, where you just submit your Aadhaar card and it automatically analyzes it, checks against documents, authorizes you, starts giving you data, right? So there are many use cases of these agentic technologies that are out there. Now, while we talked about, the good stuff, right? Like AI, think about deploying AI, using AI. Actually, before even I progress, I wanted to show you a quick example of which you guys can also try today. You can go to something called as gamma.app, GAMMA.app. It's a PowerPoint builder. It's a website builder that you can use today. And this is a very good example of human in the loop system. Um, so let's talk about, let's give a quick example. For example, today I am talking to you. I wanted to build this presentation, I can say generative AI fundamentals. I can ask the AI to actually generate the PowerPoint. Now it has done PowerPoint slide titles for me. Now this is a good example of human in the loop. For before I continue, it's actually allowing me to change the titles if I want, right? So I can say generative AI and LLMs, right? So I modified the things I want to add across the system. Or I can add more cards. Once I confirm that, I can click on continue. It will ask me for what theme I want. Let's pick up a theme because this platform is built on certain themes, and we can click on generate. Now this is where an AI agent is doing some internet research, looking into my content, calling a doc generation agent, and it's actually building a whole PowerPoint for me. Now in my original prompt, if I would have given it more context, it would have built a slide for something like, I want. But in this case, you can see this is also pretty powerful. It has actually gone ahead and built a good responsive, slide deck for me. But believe me, today's presentation was not built using this. I have built it myself. But yes, generative AI can really allow you to build this. So you remember I added and LLM. It actually added a definition of LLMs for you, basis that as well in the slide. So this is where the power of LLMs is really changing the game. Imagine now attaching your company content to this PowerPoint builder, and you can really start building a PowerPoint for yourself. Nazim, I have a question from you. Is it possible to share a sample rack configuration doc? I'll ensure I pass on a sample to the NIIT team, and probably you can get in touch with them. But one quick example I can give you is go to langchain.com. Lang LANG. I can actually type it in the chat. Langchain has an amazing blog, and you will find a really great architecture diagram and a process to implement a RAG architecture.
Thank you.
Moving on. So as I said, it's not only about implementing. You guys need to build your skills, your team skills at a very large scale. I'm a big fan of Jensen Huang, who'd actually waited 30 years to have his prime time with NVIDIA. But one of the very key sayings he has is that AI is not going to take away your job. The person who knows AI will. And it's a very important fact that everyone needs to keep in mind that it's now or never to start learning AI because it started to disrupt the environment. Right. That said, we are seeing a lot of issues across organizations which are very common. Right. I talk to many CXOs and CIOs, and and to business managers, product managers, team managers, and I'm seeing a very similar, scenario across these organizations. First, what we are seeing is the AI adoption is very slow. Even when you give somebody ChatGPT on a day-to-day basis, they are using it sometimes and maybe not every time. Right. So you need to think about how do you embed it in your process. The second thing is any AI is not a perfect human being. In fact, human beings are also not perfect. So it is a probabilistic technology where the answer is being calculated by maths, and the maths is giving you a probability of an answer, right? So it will not give you 100% accurate answers all the time. So any system you build, you have to think about to how to handle that probabilistic nature, right? Second is we are seeing employees thinking of AI as a threat, right? So employers are seeing AI as a replacement for themselves. What you need to give them confidence is that if you build your AI skills, if you start becoming more productive, there's nothing that can replace you. And that's where, training your folks is very important in the technology. I run an organization which has 100 employees. We run a generative AI training session every 2 months to train our folks. Right. And any new joiner has to go through the program. In fact, we have even given them an onboarding chatbot to go through, what they have to. The lack of AI technical expertise. I have built all my expertise using YouTube, doing practical examples of generative AI. BCG had a big hand because I was leading generative AI and innovation for the organization. So I got to, try out ChatGPT from to somewhere in the middle of 2022 when ChatGPT 2 was a thing, not even ChatGPT 3, right? But yes, think about bringing your leadership up to speed. It should not just be the middle management. It should also be the leadership. Everyone should get onboarded to AI. And lastly, as I said, this is a probabilistic technology. It can sometimes go wrong. You have to think about how do you build your constitution, how do you build your organization in such a way or systems in such a way that you can really control those hallucinations and as well as train your users to check answers. For example, when I was showing you a RAG platform, one of the important parts of the responsible AI is showing the relevant citations so that the user before consuming the answer actually verifies the answer. And this is something you will have to tell your people when you're building such systems. All right. The last thing I want to cover is no AI system should be built without keeping responsible AI or ethical considerations in mind, right? Um, any revolution, be it industrial revolution, internet revolution, all of them brought in about some changes in the way people work. And yes, it will happen that AI will make some roles redundant while making some roles really powerful, right? So think about what are those roles which will get redundant, how you can think about sensitizing your employees, how you can build their skill sets to pick up more strategic things. For example, when I was building this knowledge bot inside of BCG, we were able to sensitize the people who were actually giving these answers to consultants using the knowledge to tell them start learning AI to build great PowerPoints to actually aid the consultants better. So instead of just them answering questions so because the chatbot took their place, and the whole team was able to strategically do better work going forward. Whatever you build, you have to think about making it transparent. It should be citing sources, and there should be explainability in the way it is giving answers. A good example of, in ChatGPT, the new model that has come out, O1, it actually explains it thinking very well, right? So when you are building your systems, show that, okay, it actually went to these 6 documents, referenced it, came back with an answer, but generated the answer by citing only one source, right? A good platform to try out this second scenario is perplexity.com. Perplexity is kind of a Google search competitor now, where perplexity.com, you can go and ask any question. It's going to craft beautiful answers, give you all the internet sources, videos, things like those. The AI, as I said, you're training it on internet data, right? It's as good as what's available on the internet. In fact, some people say that if you ask ChatGPT with a lot of please, it will actually give you a better answer, because most of the way we all write our emails is please, can you give this request? Can you request you to provide this? So a lot of training data has a lot of politeness built into it, right? So AI model also looks into that politeness patterns. It wants you to be polite. So if you ask that, AI can be biased that ways, right? A lot of these models are being trained in the US, right? So they are going to have a lot of US data. So hence, there might be racial inequalities in the data. You have to take care of all of these things while you are, building these systems. Testing these systems and evaluating answers is a very important aspect of before releasing it, to your users. I've already explained how human in the loop is very important, and AI can hallucinate. And big platforms like ChatGPT or Claude, which is by Anthropic, have clearly mentioned below their chat boxes, ChatGPT can make mistakes. Check important inflow. Please double check your responses. So as I said, that is very important. And how do you go about it? Okay. Before I think I'm reaching towards the end of my session, but I have a question from Dilip. What is LLM and why are we using GenAI? Dilip, this is a very broad question, but let me try my best to answer it. And I'll probably pull up a slide, I have a slide. Give me a second. Okay. So, Dilip, an LLM is fundamentally an AI technology which has been trained on a lot of data. For example, imagine that you have a small child, and to the child you have given all of Wikipedia, and you have told the child to read up all of Wikipedia. Now, when I say who is Amitabh Bachchan to that child, because that child has read the whole encyclopedia or Wikipedia and understood all the terminologies and read about Amitabh Bachchan, it will actually be able to come up with that answer, right? Which is where the generative part comes in. And hence, if you have a lot of internet data that's available and trained inside an AI model, you can go ahead and ask, like, if you start asking, saying, I am, it's going to start predicting answers for you. It's going to start predicting stuff. That is where the generative part comes in a large language model. So fundamentally, that's what is a large language model, but it's a whole class in itself. The whole assumption around this was that, people have a basic understanding of LLMs, but I'm happy to take it offline as well. All right. I have reached the end of my session. Syed and Gaurav, again, happy to take questions in chat, and I think towards the end, but I'll pass it on to Syed. We do have, and I would truly appreciate you guys giving me feedback. Even if, in some cases, probably you would wanted us to include some basics of LLMs. But I would really ask all of you to scan this QR code, fill up a very small form. It has a net promoter score as well, so that if you want to recommend a similar course to your colleagues, as well as some feedback from me. So I would really appreciate if you guys can take 2 minutes to open up this form, probably fill it during the session or after the session. But I'm hoping this was useful to all of you. I really appreciate you for all of your time. I'll pass
one
it on
last
to
question. One last
Go,
question. And
go ahead, please.
where the data science will be come into picture in this?
Sure. So there are two, three aspects of data science here, Narsima. One is the good part is the technology is pre-trained. So a lot of data science has already happened on your behalf beforehand. So that's the first part. Once you have these models, what you can do on top of this is there is a technique called fine tuning. Okay. Now fine tuning will allow to train these models on your own data, which is where data scientists come in. Right. For example, you have a lot of Q&A data from historical service desk tickets, right? Or tickets which were answered very successfully. Now you can use that data to train back these systems using the technique called fine tuning and build a small model for yourself. Now that model will be very personalized, very specific to you guys, and you can start using in your day-to-day. Right. So that is where data science will come in. In some scenarios, some very powerful or big organizations who have access to GPUs are able to actually use even pre-trained models, and they have data scientists to do all of that stuff. But as I said, if you are just getting started on the journey, start with just consuming these APIs, and then eventually you can think about, okay, I can fine tune this API to do a slightly better answer or a very specific tone of voice answer to me.
Okay. If I want to start a fresh journey with AI and Gen AI, from where I need to start? This is the question from my side.
I'll let Gaurav, answer that towards the end, because I think NIT has a lot of ideas around that. But as I said, my teacher has been YouTube. There are many channels available for you guys to go through, but it's very unstructured, to be honest. So I would suggest to start with very structured programs. But the first start is just go to ChatGPT and start using it every day in your day-to-day life. I use it for my son's homework, for guiding him. I'm very bad with Hindi, even though I'm a North Indian, but I'm not able to do a good job with Hindi. So I actually, stealingly use ChatGPT all the time for my school.
Me too. Yes.
Yeah, but I think like even ChatGPT can give you there's the client who came to me and said, I want to build this thing that who can scan a handbag and tell me which handbag is this from my inventory. So I said you can do a quick example in ChatGPT. You can actually upload 3 pictures and ask ChatGPT to give you attributes of those pictures, and it actually gives you metadata for those pictures. Now, when you upload another picture, it's going to actually come out with the similar attributes to give you an answer. So you now have built a very simple chatbot to identify bags, right, from your list of metadata. All right. We'll have another 15 minutes towards the end. I'll pass it on to Gaurav to take it from there. I really appreciate it for everyone for your time today.
Thanks, Prateek. Thanks. It was a wonderful session. So appreciate your time and patience. I would request all the participants to please scan the QR code and share your feedback. Your inputs are very important and critical for us to work on the next session. And I would request Gaurav Vaidyasen, our solution architect for data science, to take over and help us with the offerings that we have at StackRoute. Gaurav, over to you, please.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for your excellent session, Prateek. I think we didn't realize that 1 hour got over. Yeah, and that, as my introduction goes, look, data science. Somebody asked this question, right? Data science is just an easier word to pronounce. That's how it works, right? And people have been using data science for a while. But data science, AI, ML, deep learning, Gen AI has a lot of interconnection. In fact, I'll also bring in the concept of data engineering because somebody did ask about this question. So, in very simpler words, when you work with complex data sets and use, you try to build human-like intelligence and use machines to extract information and insight to go for AI and ML models, right? When you use a lot of statistics with some overlap of supervised learning and unsupervised learning, what you use, try to extract information, insights, actionable insights, using applied statistics, that falls completely under data science, right? So I just don't lead data science. I basically lead AI ML practice, and I also lead the data engineering practice at NIT StackRoute. And from a Gen AI, from this session, I just want you guys to take two takeaways, right? Gen AI is two kinds of uh, personas or users. One as a consumer, right? Means you don't have to know the underlying technology. You may not have to know LLM how it operates. You may not even have to know attention modeling or discriminator and generator models. None of that is required. You basically need to know prompt engineering. What is a zero-shot prompt? What is a multi-shot prompt? What are multi-shot prompts? And basically, how do you write better English? And give context to the tool so that it can give you relevant answers. And that can be done without knowing the underlying technology. The second part is on a developer side, where you may want to create your custom GPT models, as Prateek was mentioning. You may want to use RAG. You may want to create a very contextual tool which can be useful for your particular organization. That's where you need to know, the aspect of augmentation and adaptation. For awareness and application, primarily you are good with, if you just understand prompt engineering and how does it work. Uh, so we have been working with a lot of our customers to address both parts of the requirement. First and foremost is embracing the technology itself, right? Uh, there are multiple GPT tools available. Chat GPT is one of it. I think Prateek did touch on two, three tools. But how does it work, right? What are the areas, or how it can be useful for you, right? There's a lot has been said about Gen AI will change the world, will replace humans, and so on and so forth, right? I don't think so that is going to happen. If it is going to happen, it isn't going to happen very soon. A lot of it has to be done by human validation. And we have seen one example of AI in healthcare industry, especially in the critical industries where lives are at stake and where that requires human intelligence. AI will only standardize jobs, right? Will help you to do that standardized jobs. But a lot of human input would still be useful and would be valid in the due course of time. The other aspect is productivity. Since there are, in fact, we conducted some productivity clinics for our customers. That for a HR team, for a tech team, for a coder, for a programmer, how can you use? I think somebody did ask this question: where to start, right? I don't know whether that person is still there on the call, but I think that question has come from Balaji.
Yeah, I'm there.
Yeah. So, if you remember that four A's, what you see, right? That is the journey what anyone has to take. First is the awareness. Obviously, there are umpty number of platforms, content, materials available. So you need to also know which one is the right one to start with, right? And that's where we work with our customers to identify that. In fact, we have created a lot of our own content to deliver such programs in awareness. The second part is application, right? How would you apply in real world, scenarios? Will help with the prompt engineering. We'll talk about different tools and platforms, and we'll bring in scenarios that are more contextual to different businesses, be it retail, be it manufacturing, automotive, and so on. Or maybe your day-to-day activity, what you do. If you're a programmer, how can you do clean coding? How can you, write proper comments for your coding, right? How can you optimize coding for deployment? All of that can be done. And then we talked about the third layer. The third step of learning would be augmentation, where you leverage, and GPT models and GPT tools allows you to obviously integrate a lot of APIs. You can also use another beautiful website is beautiful.ai. I think gamma.app, what Prateek was mentioning, beautiful.ai does a similar job. It allows you, and it has hundreds of predefined templates and allows you to create presentations on the go. You may have to just give the content what you want them to do, because that is very contextualized and subjective to what you are looking at, and it will create a presentation on the go. There is a free version available, there is a pro version available, depending on what level of complexity or what level of content you are building on. and so on, right? And then these are already available. But how would you create the custom LLMs, right? Now, a lot of the problem is happening on data security. A lot of questions are being asked on data governance, organizations, compliance, information security policies, right? Some of it can be done using those guardrails, right? So that data doesn't go outside. Still, that is not bulletproof yet, right? But there are applications which will allow you to do that even at an augmentation stage. And also, adaptations is purely closed loop, right? You can create your own LLM model. You can also, train your data, and that's how the inception of these tools came into. So this is a journey what anyone can go through. First two are very, very important to set up the foundations, and then depending on the career what you're progressing to, you need to go for the next two. But other than that, there are two aspects what you need to know if you want to build a career in this particular space. And I think Prateek did talk about that. Uh, One is building a AI first organization. Before that, building the data first organization. And for that, data engineering capability is very, very important. And we have seen a huge surge in the requirements what when we work with our customers to build those data pipelines, because data is flowing from all the sources, variety of sources, using the right data ingestion techniques. How would you do the, extract, transform that ELT and ETL processing, data transformation technique, and build those data pipelines. The next part of it, what comes into the AI/ML, right? How would you do a problem solving approach? That's where you work on predictive modeling, you work on supervised learning, unsupervised learning, machine learning techniques, and deep learning, which is just a subset of that, right? And then you go on data visualization. That is the third part of the solution framework, where you want to present that technical outcomes into business outcomes, or technical insights into business outcomes. All of that are still the core principles, by the way, right? That has not changed. With even the advent of Gen AI, a lot of efficiency improvement has happened, but having that particular framework in place is still very, very crucial, and a lot of investment in going each one of the areas. In fact, with the same customer, we are working, 2 out of 3 or 3 out of 3 in some instances, right? Where we're helping them to build the data engineering capability. We're also helping them to do the data science AI/ML capabilities, and training them on one of the popular tools, be it Power BI, Looker, or your tablet, right? Now, once you do all of this, what Gen AI does, it adds a new dimension of to the entire ecosystem, which is generating new text. Right? You may not have to have a scenario to have a prediction now. It can actually do the prediction without having a scenario, and can also generate a new scenario for you if you want, based on the learnings from the data what you've already built in the first one, right? And that's how these things are correlated. So I think there was a question on very specifically on that, so I wanted to touch on that. Is there anything else, any other questions, Sayed? We have it on the chat. Maybe.
I've taken care of all of them.
Oh, great. Thanks a lot. Um, the final point which I wanted to bring in is, you know, there are people, and this is a very, very practical scenario. A lot of coders, especially in Java, .NET, programmers, right? They want to build a career in data science, AI/ML, right? There are folks who are working in business intelligence, now becoming now in the laggard part of the cycle, uh, who are working in data warehousing, or working in using ETL tools such as Informatica, Abnishu, and so on, want to build their career in data science. So there are different paths, right? A coder has a very logical understanding of writing any logic. That means he'll figure out a way. And learning a new programming language is definitely not going to be a difficult task if you're already exposed to one of the programming. In fact, if you know Java, it's very easy, very, very easy to learn Python, right? In fact, sometimes both the languages are used interchangeably also in data engineering pipelines. Uh, But if you have not worked on data, that is a new element which you need to learn. Similarly, for a BI person who has been working in data warehousing, has a very strong connect with data transformation, exploratory data analysis. He is also familiar with, to some extent, applied statistics, right? What are different kinds of probability distribution and all of that. For them, programming can be a new dimension or a new scope which can be added, right? So there are different paths. Happy to discuss it offline, depending on what requirements your organization might have. But these are the journeys what we have created, at NIT StackRoute, and working along with customers, be it in IT services or GCCs, analytics companies, and also, the consulting companies, or the big fours. So yeah, so thanks a lot, Prateek. I think just wanted to add on top of it what you said. It was a really interesting session. But if there are any other questions, we can take it up. I think Vamsi has a question for you, Prateek.
Vamsi, yeah. So Vamsi has asked regarding human in the loop feedback. Does the feedback impact only that specific response, or can it be used to improve future outputs as well? So one of the things, Vamsi, we do in that scenario is that feedback that was given is captured in the memory and it's available for the LLM model for future in the memory. So the way you configure your memory can decide either you keep it for the specific response or for generic responses. So memory as a concept allows LLM to refer to it when generating future responses. But you can imagine in a large system, when you have thousands of, or millions of responses going out, the memory can be pretty huge, right? So we have to think about the right balance. What are the things that go back into the memory? The systems that we are building right now or seeing in the market is that they're thinking about manually updating the memory than automatically updating the memory on the fly. So data scientists look into data for a month, analyze it, synthesize it using other models, and then add something to the memory or improve the prompts. That's how you're typically able to use them.
Yes, Prateek, thank you. Thanks for this.
So we have only 11 participants taking the feedback. So Prateek, could you please present the QR code? So it hardly takes 2 minutes, guys, for you to fill up the feedback. So appreciate if you could spare 2 minutes and help us with the same.
Okay,
Let me tell you, Syed will not stop till the time you guys finish. No, it's also very important, so we do these kind of sessions and stay ahead with the, StackRoute webinar series, right? And try to address the emerging technologies, try to bring in, and Gen AI means, I'm sure Prateek will agree, every day it's changing. Every day, I'm not even saying every week. And I keep hearing some of the talks, people have, also gone to an extent that said they slept with something and woke up with something else, right? Means that is also the level of change when you work in different time zones. So yes, it is pretty evolving. All of us at this point of time, I think none of it's very difficult to claim to be an expert on something which is evolving so fast. And it will continue to evolve because now the adoption of this technology has moved on so fast. Organizations are finding it amusing also to some extent. But how do we take it? Because if you are not there, you're not in the race. It's like you're left out. If you don't talk Gen AI in your talk 5 times or in any speech, what you do, you will look like an alien now, right? Uh, and having said that, so we will conduct more sessions in the future, and on the same theme, we'll try to build on this. We will bring in some of the RAG examples. Maybe we'll do a session or a workshop at a later point of time where you build this on your own along with one of our SMEs, and take away that in with the session, right? So the feedback is very, very important, guys. Please give it, and it will help us to improve going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I'm realizing with Jenny, I have woken up to new concepts in the morning, but I have continuously updated my learning deck every week because of the amount of change that's happening in the morning. I have in fact built a custom GPT where I ask what happened in the last week, look into all the YouTube videos, find me stuff. So that also allows me to, update a lot of things. But yeah, I think once you start building it as part of your practice, you'll start learning how to adapt to Gen AI.
Yeah. Yeah, great. Any other questions? If we don't have, we can wrap up this session.
Yes.
Great.
I'll just give it a call out. The feedback is really important for me as well because I work closely with NIIT. So if you still haven't, please give the feedback. Dilip, yes, you can go ahead and ask your question. You can unmute yourself and talk probably. I guess he's typing. Back to you, Gaurav and Sayed.
Sure. Thanks, Prateek, for your time, and I appreciate all the participants' time and patience.
Yeah, thank you all. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thanks all. So we are assuming no more questions, so we can go ahead and close the call. Thanks all once again. Have a great day ahead.
Thank you, guys. Take care.